Another Wednesday, another YieldMax distribution announcement. What is up, guys? I hope everyone is doing good. Market has been rocky, but we are holding up. This Wednesday morning, YieldMax just published their distribution announcement, and like I do every Wednesday, I'm just going to go over all of these, talk about their yields, talk about the best payers, the less good ones, look into the underlyings and see a bit why some of them paid more, some of them paid less. And I'll also be sharing my own holdings of those YieldMax ETFs and how much I'll be getting this Friday. So let's get into it. I went on the press release where they announced the Group A distributions for this Friday, August 8th. I essentially extracted everything on a spreadsheet so it's easier for us to see, and I ordered them by distribution rate. The first one here with a distribution rate of 0 because they just added it to the Group A distributions. So in 4 weeks in the next Group A distribution, we'll see one more ETF. So we'll see RBLY, which is YieldMax option ETF on Roblox. As we can see in the past year, Roblox is up 237%. It's a pretty volatile stock. That's probably why YieldMax decided to create their own single ticker ETF on this one. Hopefully this one will allow us to catch some high yield distribution. We'll have to see in 4 weeks how much this one is going to pay. Now for ULTY, as you can see, ULTY is the highest payer this week. So round of applause for everyone holding ULTY. Another week. I think right now it's 4 or 5 weeks in a row of paying 10 cents per week, especially right now at the end of July. The implied volatility of the market has been dropping a little and everything has been a bit red, a bit sideways. So for options trading, it hasn't been the best conditions. But as we know, ULTY is very flexible and they're allowed to pull in some interesting tickers, some volatile tickers, some tickers when their news are going to come. So they're able to pull in those high volatility, high quality stocks whenever they need. So I think that this is why they're able to maintain a 10-cent distribution rate, even though all of their other ETFs has been paying less and less because of the current market conditions. Congrats to anyone holding ULTY. After that, we see TSMY, which paid a distribution yield of 76%, so pretty good. And then YBIT paid 65%. LFGY paid 63%, so another week of around 43 to 45 cent distribution. So LFGY is very slept on. Every single week if you watch my videos, the distribution per share of LFGY has been almost the same. So I see this one being very consistent, and despite paying 63%, which is less than ULTY, on the consistent side, I think it is pretty up to par with how ULTY is consistent with their distributions. Then YMAX 14.5 cents. Not too bad, but still a bit lower than last week, but this really depends on market conditions and it depends on last week's Group D distribution. And since overall it's been paying a bit less, then obviously YMAX is going to pay less. But then when you see things like this, like RBLY being added, this will just add more value to YMAX because in the next Group A distribution, we'll have one more ticker to add into YMAX. The more single stock YieldMax ETFs we have, the more stable we should see our YMAX distributions be. Now OARC paid 55%, 37 cents. Crash paid 55%. TSLY paid 50%, so a bit disappointing for this one, but we'll look into it. Feet paid 50%, Google paid 44%, 5E 40%, and then Chippy 38%, SNOY 37%, GPTY 34%, QDTY, and RDTY about 30%. YMAG 7 cents, so nothing too impressive, but still not bad, 27%. XOMO 24%, and then SDTY 23%. And then BRKC, which is a new one for the Group A. In the last Group A distribution, BRKC was there, but it did not pay. So this is their first Group A distribution payment. So this is the first time it's been added to the Group A distribution, paid a yield of 16.7%. This just adds a bit of cash, and hopefully this should help increase next week's YMAX distribution. Now let's look into ULTY. So they paid 85%, another week at 10 cents. Let's look at their current holdings. So I extracted their holdings as of today, August 6th. And I sorted them by weight. As we can see, their top holding right now is Rigetti Computing. Then they have NewScale, Upstart, Nebius, AppLovin, IonQ, Space Mobile. They have MSTR, they have Mara, Coinbase, Hood. They have Galaxy, Oklo, Palantir, Reddit, Bitmine, SMCI, Applied Optoelectronics. They have Snapchat, Tempest AI, Ventriv Holdings, Vistra, Webbull, and then they have some VIX future ETFs. Some leverage VIX future ETF, pretty interesting this one. So in the last video I extracted their holdings, and as we can see it is different. Last week their top holding was Cash, Upstart, Reddit, MicroStrategy. This week basically it's Rigetti, NewScale, Upstart, and then Cash. Despite having similar holdings to last week, YieldMax have done some changes to ULTY and they've added more weight to Rigetti and NewScale. And they know what they're doing and they probably analyze those stocks and maybe some good news are coming for these, or they're just very good stocks at the moment. So they pull it into ULTY, and they're able to keep extracting those distributions and really milk the IV out of these stocks. If we look at Rigetti, for example, in the last month, it's up 20%. In a single day, we've seen a bump of 30%. So obviously, if YieldMax is able to trade this one has been swinging 17-15% up and down and 30% in a single day, and is extremely volatile and doing very, very well in terms of growth and price appreciation in the last months. Since it dipped here on January 13, it is currently up 170%. I think YieldMax is doing a good thing of pulling this one into ULTY, and it's pretty cool that we have that flexibility of ULTY, or else if we would have wanted to take advantage of Rigetti, for example, we would have to wait from YieldMax to create a single stock ETF on Rigetti. And as Jay said in a few interviews, that would take 4 months to hit the market and be available for investors. And who knows where Rigetti will be in 4 months. We just know that at the moment, Rigetti, for example, is doing well. ULTY is taking advantage of that and pulling it into the portfolio. Then we have TSM, which paid 76%, so pretty good. I think anything that is above 75% for a monthly distribution is a very, very good payout. If we look at TSM's volatility in the past 3 months, as we can see in the month of July, the IV was up in about 10 to 15% and it was rising. Mid-month of July, it's been lower, so I feel like able to extract a 75% distribution by taking advantage of the first half of the month of July. And then the second half of the month of July has been pretty bad in terms of implied volatility, so they probably haven't been able to extract as much premium in that second part of July. They're able to sell covered calls for premium, and also I know that they buy calls as a way to uncap the upside, and they're probably able to sell those calls for a profit if the underlying is going up. Now we have YBIT, which is their Bitcoin ETF, 65%, nothing too crazy, but still pretty good, and it's pretty much same thing for this one. In the month of July, the IV of Bitcoin and Bitcoin itself has been going up, and everything has been doing very well for Bitcoin. And then in the second half of July, Bitcoin has been pretty much sideways and going down, and as you can see here, the price here is sideways, the blue line, and the implied volatility has been sideways and slightly going down. They probably haven't been able to make as much money from their options, but regardless of that, they still paid a good distribution of 65%. In the past, Tesla has paid some distribution of 100%, and this one is only 50%. In the last 3 months, the underlying of Tesla has been going up, down, and the implied volatility has been pretty high and has been sticking in the 25 to 30%, and sometimes even here it spiked to 54%. In the beginning of July, it's been pretty low and it's been trending down to around 17%. And the second half of July here, pretty much it dropped to almost nothing. This is probably why Tesla only paid a yield of 50% on this week's distribution. The implied volatility has been going down, as well as the underlying also has been going down. They're holding a lot of calls at 290, 295. And the current price of Tesla right now is $300. So if Tesla keeps going up and doesn't go down too much, they will be able to sell those calls for profit. But then if Tesla continues to drop, then YieldMax is going to lose money on those calls, and that will not help with next month's distribution. But yeah, TSLY is bullish, and we're going to be able to see some big distributions when Tesla is going to start moving up a lot again. Now for Google, they paid a distribution rate of 44%, which is not bad, but nothing too crazy. And then if we look here at the price has been actually very, very good for Google. As you can see, in the past 3 months, it's basically been going up, going up, going up. The price did very good. It went from $152 to almost $200, and the implied volatility has been pretty good. But as we can see, it's the same pattern for the month of July. The implied volatility of Google has been pretty high, and then at the end of the month of July, it basically dropped a lot. The IV here was pretty good, and then we saw a rally, so I'm not sure, maybe they were too aggressive with some call strike prices and they lost money, even though the price of Google has been rising a lot in the month of July. Now for my own holdings, in the month of July, I bought my first 500 shares of ULTY, and this month I'm planning to buy more YMAX, so this will go up. But currently I have 1,359 shares of YMAX and 500 shares of ULTY. So this Friday, I'm expected to get $197 from YMAX and $50 from ULTY for a total of around $250 US before tax. So that is not too bad. And like I said, like this month, I'm planning to buy a lot of shares of YMAX. So hopefully my weekly distributions are going to keep increasing as long as YMAX doesn't drop their distributions too much. Now let's just look at how much you would have received if you had 100 shares and 1,000 shares of each of these ETFs. If you had 100 shares of ULTY, you would have got $10, obviously, because it's just 10 cents times 10. If you have 1,000 shares of ULTY, you would have received $100. And then TSMY, you would have received $953 if you had 1,000 shares. Now for the Bitcoin ETF, you would have received 542. For LFGY, you would have received 436. For YMAX, 1,000 shares, 145. From ORC, you would have received 376. From Crash, 194. from TSLY 300. For this month at least, if you would be holding both TSLY and Crash, as you can see, both of them paid around the same yield, so you would be hedging your portfolio in and getting some good 50% plus distributions from both of these ETF. So for people holding both of these this month, I think this month has probably been a good month for them. And then 1,000 shares of FEET would pay you $1,358. 1,000 shares of GOOY would pay you $450. 5E 1,200. CHIPI $390. SNOI $455. DPTY $300. QDTY $271. RDTY $243. YMAG $80. XOMO $230. And then SDTY $200 and BRKC $611 for Group A for this month versus Group A of July. We did have BRKC this month, which contributed to the distributions if we compare with Group A of last month. Hopefully next week's distribution for YMAX is going to be slightly higher. I'm not too excited to see that because last month, the Group B distribution of YMAX was only 10 and 41 cents. And next week, YMAX distribution is going to be based on this week's Group A distribution. And since last month's was only 10 cents, I think next week's distribution for YMAX might be a little lower than this week. Maybe again in the 10 or 11 or 12 cents because this week we did add BRKC into YMAX distribution and we did see some good distributions for TSMY and YBIT, but overall, nothing too crazy. We didn't see any 100% yielders. And then we had 165 one and the other ones were all 55% or less. Next week's YMAX distribution might be a little bit disappointing if you compare to this week's, but usually YMAX doesn't pay crazy amounts during Group B distributions. Especially this week, we didn't have anything outstanding, so we'll have to see. Let me know in the comments what you guys are receiving every week. There's people that are subscribed to me or people commenting on my videos that have crazy amount of ULTY of YMAX or any of those single stock ETFs that are getting crazy distribution. That's very motivating to see, so feel free to share how much you're getting this week. Feel free to share how much you're getting this week and let me know in the comments what you guys think of this week's Group A distributions. Until next time, take care.